From Yakuza to cartel warlords, these real gangs ruled with terror. The truth is darker than any movie you've seen. The Yakuza are not just one gang. They are a collection of syndicates spread across Japan and far beyond. At their peak, they were estimated to have more than 80,000 members. That's more than some armies. What makes them especially terrifying isn't just their numbers or the scale of their operations, but the way they blend centuries-old rituals with cold, calculated control over black markets, illegal gambling protection rackets, and yes, even certain political and corporate ties. One of the most recognizable things about the Yakuza is their ink. Not just any tattoos, full-body artwork, sometimes done the old way with wooden sticks and needles and painful, secretive sessions. These tattoos aren't for show. They mark loyalty, rank, and history. If a member betrays the code, they don't just get kicked out. In many cases, they're expected to cut off a piece of their own finger. That's not urban legend. That's their version of accountability. They've been known to run entire districts where local shops pay them for protection, and entire nightlife scenes operate under their watch. Want to open a club in a certain area of Tokyo or Osaka? You go through them. Don't, and things get messy, fast. What's eerie is how they often mix with the legitimate world. Some of them wear tailored suits, attend public ceremonies, and move through high-end offices. In the 1980s and 90s, their influence reached deep into Japan's financial system. Think of it as The Godfather, but with katana blades, silence, and contracts, inked in both words and fear. And yet they have rules. No random attacks, no harming civilians without a reason. It's a twisted code of ethics, one that's been slowly unraveling in recent years. Authorities have cracked down hard, passing laws that make it nearly impossible for them to even rent an apartment or open a bank account. Some syndicates have splintered, and infighting has increased. But don't let that fool you. They haven't disappeared. They've just changed masks. Today, the Yakuza are more discreet, working behind screens and in the shadows of legitimate companies. They still control parts of the underworld, and in times of crisis like natural disasters, they've even shown up offering supplies faster than the government. Creepy? Definitely. Strategic? Absolutely. Their story isn't one of simple violence. It's about structure, silence, and a chilling ability to adapt. Beneath the suits of ink and the silence, beats the heart of one of the most enduring criminal organizations on Earth. They're known for faces covered in ink, stares that feel colder than steel, and a level of violence that earned them a place among the world's most feared gangs. Mara Salvatrucha, or MS-13, wasn't born in El Salvador, as many assume. It started in Los Angeles when immigrants fleeing civil war tried to defend themselves from street violence. What began as survival turned into something else entirely. Today, MS-13 operates across the Americas from the suburbs of Virginia to the prisons of Honduras. Their influence stretches far beyond spray-painted tags and low-level street crime. This is a gang built on fear, control, and brutality. They run extortion rackets in entire neighborhoods, smuggle everything from white powder to weapons, and execute anyone who crosses them with shocking efficiency. The methods they use? Better left undescribed in detail. Just know that they're meant to send a message, and that message is, we control this place. What makes MS-13 so dangerous isn't just what they do. It's how young they start and how loyal they stay. Recruits are often just teens, some even younger, pulled into the gang through pressure, poverty, or the need for protection. Once inside, getting out is nearly impossible. Their motto says it all, Mata, Viola, Controla. It's as brutal as it sounds, and it's tattooed on the skin of some of their most committed members. They communicate through coded numbers, graffiti, and subtle hand signs, but also run complex operations on phones from inside prison walls. In some cities, they've gone from feared outsiders to ruling the streets. Local businesses pay them just to operate in peace. Residents keep their heads down, knowing that even saying the wrong word can draw attention. And attention from MS-13 isn't something you want. Despite international crackdowns and mass arrests, MS-13 has proven hard to kill. Its decentralized structure means that even when leaders fall, new ones step up quickly. And the more they're pushed out of one area, the deeper they dig into another. The more attention they get, the more underground they go. Pop culture sometimes glamorizes street gangs, but there's nothing glamorous here. MS-13 doesn't want fame, it wants fear. And it gets it, city after city, by being more violent, more committed, and more unrelenting than anyone willing to stand in its way. They don't need tattoos to prove who they are. No street tags, no flashy chains, no loud shows of power. The Sicilian Mafia, or Cosa Nostra, mastered the art of organized crime long before most modern gangs were even born. And they did it with a code of silence so strict, breaking it was often a death sentence. This group didn't start with smuggling or extortion. It began in the 1800s as rural protection rackets men, offering help to landowners and businesses in exchange for money and obedience. Over time, they grew into something much more powerful. By the mid-20th century, the Mafia had embedded itself deep into Sicily's government, law enforcement, construction, and shipping industries. And when they crossed the Atlantic, they didn't just spread, they flourished. In the United States, the Mafia became a brand. You've seen it in movies like The Godfather and Goodfellas. But behind the Hollywood glow was a machine run on threats, bribery, and bodies. The Sicilian bosses in Palermo and Corleone controlled entire families in New York and Chicago. If you wanted to build, ship, vote, or run a business, chances are they were already involved taking a cut, making deals, or deciding who gets what. Back in Sicily, their grip was terrifying. Judges and prosecutors who stood against them were marked. One after another, high-ranking officials were targeted in carefully coordinated attacks that shocked the country and made headlines around the world. Even after massive police operations and trials, Cosa Nostra kept adapting. They never went away, they just evolved. Today, they may not be blowing up cars in Palermo like in the 1990s, but they still operate quietly through shell companies, corrupt officials, and international networks. Drug trafficking? Still there, but managed more discreetly, often through connections with other syndicates. Illegal gambling, construction fraud, and political influence? As strong as ever. They don't need to raise their voices, their silence is what makes them terrifying. In Sicily, people still lower their eyes when speaking of them. Even now, some shopkeepers leave small envelopes each month, a subtle nod to an agreement that started decades ago. The Sicilian Mafia didn't invent organized crime, but they perfected it. And they left behind a blueprint that others from Latin cartels to Russian mobs still follow to this day. Blue versus red. Crenshaw versus Compton. For decades, two of America's most notorious street gangs, the Crips and the Bloods, turned entire neighborhoods into war zones. What started in Los Angeles in the late 1960s and early 1970s evolved into a national, even international rivalry that continues to echo across cities and prisons to this day. The Crips came first young men banding together for protection during a time of racial tension and police brutality. But what began as a street brotherhood quickly grew into a full-fledged criminal organization. Robbery, illegal substance trade, arms trafficking, they didn't just survive the streets, they owned them. Then came the Bloods, rising up in direct response. Smaller at first, they compensated with sheer aggression. The result was a conflict that spiraled into a cycle of retaliation and violence that still hasn't fully stopped. Graffiti tagged in blue or red on a wall could spark a shootout. A wrong color shirt in the wrong neighborhood meant you were fair game. This wasn't just gang culture, it was a way of life, enforced through fear, loyalty, and punishment. Turf was everything, and respect was earned in blood. But this rivalry didn't stay in Los Angeles. It spread through music, media, and migration. Soon, the Crips and Bloods were in Chicago, Houston, New York, even cities overseas. Their conflict shaped fashion, language, and music, especially in hip-hop, where references to sets and blocks became anthems. Law enforcement cracked down, but the war didn't end, it went underground. Today, many members operate inside prison systems, running organized networks from within. Others have evolved into modern crews dealing in high-tech fraud, arms movement, or working through shell businesses. And still, some break away from the violence and speak out former members who warn young people not to follow the path they once walked. The rivalry is more than colors. It's a deep-rooted conflict that shaped decades of American street life. And despite efforts to stop it, the echo of that war, red and blue, blood and Crip, continues to stain the concrete of America's cities. The Triads didn't start as criminals. Their origins go back centuries to secret societies that resisted imperial rule in China. But over time, those ancient bonds of loyalty and tradition morphed into something far darker, a tightly woven underworld empire operating across continents. Today, Triads aren't just active in China or Hong Kong. They're global, stretching into Canada, the United Kingdom, Southeast Asia, and beyond. These aren't disorganized gangs loitering on corners. The Triads are highly structured, with clear hierarchies, rituals, and coded communication. Members swear blood oaths, use numeric ranks, and undergo complex initiation ceremonies. And once you're in, there's no easy way out. Their specialties are as vast as they are dangerous. From smuggling illegal goods across borders to laundering money through casinos and shell corporations, the Triads are experts at operating in the shadows. They run underground casinos, handle forged documents, traffic in stolen goods, and maintain a steady grip on parts of Asia's black markets. One of their most profitable trades involves illegal substances packaged, moved, and sold through routes that span oceans. Unlike street-level gangs, Triads don't need to make a scene. They operate behind curtains using corruption and connections to keep their hands clean and their operations running smooth. In places like Hong Kong, some Triad families became so powerful that local films and pop stars reference them openly, sometimes even glamorizing their influence. But make no mistake, behind the flashy nightclubs and tailored suits is a world built on control, fear, and consequences. Step out of line and retribution is swift, not public, but very real. Authorities continue to crack down, but Triads are slippery. Their decentralized nature makes them hard to pin down. They don't rely on a single leader. Instead, they function more like franchises, each cell capable of acting independently while staying connected to the larger network. The Triads have survived dynasties, revolutions, and modern governments. They don't need visibility to dominate. They've thrived by staying quiet, calculating, and always just out of reach. At his height, Pablo Escobar was worth more than $30 billion, making him one of the richest criminals in history. But that wealth wasn't built through business deals or inheritance. It came from the Medellin cartel, a brutal, unstoppable empire that controlled the flow of white powder into the United States and much of the world. Based in Colombia, the cartel didn't just operate like a criminal group. It was a parallel state with its own army, its own fleet of planes and submarines, and its own rules. Anyone who got in the way, politicians, judges, journalists, risked becoming a target. And if you couldn't be bribed, you were eliminated. That wasn't an empty threat. It was policy. Escobar flooded American streets with illegal product, earning millions per day. He bought entire neighborhoods, built soccer stadiums, and even offered to pay off Colombia's national debt in exchange for amnesty. To many, he was a modern-day Robin Hood. To others, he was a nightmare in human form. The violence was unlike anything law enforcement had seen. Car bombs exploded in city centers, presidential candidates were assassinated, judges were gunned down. The country's capital became a war zone, all under the shadow of one man's empire. But power invites enemies. As the US and Colombian governments closed in, Escobar turned more erratic. His lavish estate, complete with a private zoo, became a prison he couldn't leave. The walls were closing in and his paranoia grew. He was finally tracked and killed on a rooftop, but his legacy didn't die with him. The Medellin cartel's methods, structure, and brutality became a model for others. It changed the game forever, not just in Colombia, but across the entire global underworld. Today, Escobar's face is sold on t-shirts, his name used in songs and shows. But behind the legend lies a dark truth. One man built an empire on fear, illegal trade, and death. And for a while, the world couldn't stop him. Naples is known for pizza art and beauty, but beneath the surface, there's another side one shaped by smoke, cash, and blood. That's the world of the Camorra, a mafia network unlike any other. If the Sicilian Mafia operates like a boardroom, the Camorra runs more like a battlefield. It isn't one big family, it's dozens of clans, all fighting for territory, money, and power. And they don't wait for orders. They take action fast, often without warning. Unlike the more structured Cosa Nostra, the Camorra thrives on chaos. Turf wars in Naples have left entire neighborhoods caught in the crossfire. They run protection rackets, move illegal substances, control parts of waste disposal, and flood markets with counterfeit goods. In some areas, they're stronger than local government. Residents don't call the police, they look to the Camorra to settle disputes, collect debts, even organize construction. The Camorra's grip extends far beyond Naples. From Spain to Eastern Europe, they've become global smugglers and money launderers. And they do it with frightening adaptability. If one clan is taken down, another rises in its place, younger, hungrier, and more reckless. Their violence is personal. Assassinations are often carried out in daylight, sometimes by teenagers who view pulling the trigger as a shortcut to status. These aren't random street punks, they're part of a culture raised in the shadow of crime, where a single act of violence can change your life. Despite major crackdowns by Italian authorities, the Camorra keeps coming back. They embed themselves into struggling neighborhoods, offer jobs, provide money, and fill the gaps that institutions fail to reach. That's what makes them so hard to wipe out. They're not just criminals, they're part of the local fabric. If The Godfather was about honor and hierarchy, the Camorra is about survival and speed. It's messy, dangerous, and always evolving. In Naples, the line between legal and illegal doesn't blur, it vanishes. When former elite soldiers turn into criminals, the result isn't just dangerous, it's devastating. Los Zetas began as the enforcement wing of another cartel, but it didn't take long for them to break off and become one of the most feared cartels in Mexico's history. Unlike traditional gangs, Los Zetas brought military training, tactical discipline, and advanced weapons to the underworld. They used night vision goggles, encrypted radios, and set up roadblocks dressed as federal agents. They weren't hiding in shadows. They operated like a rogue army, one that answered to no law. Their rise was built on fear. While most cartels preferred to control quietly, Los Zetas made statements. Public ones. Their attacks were designed to shock not just rivals, but the entire country. Whole towns were sometimes overrun. Local police either stepped aside or joined in. Others disappeared. They didn't just traffic substances. They extorted businesses, hijacked cargo, ran kidnapping rings, and siphoned off oil from national pipelines. They turned every resource into a revenue stream. If it could be sold, they'd find a way to control it. Their brutality sparked massive military responses. Helicopters, convoys, full-scale raids, the Mexican government launched all-out operations to dismantle them, and they succeeded in killing or capturing top leaders. But as the top fell, new splinter groups formed, just as violent and harder to track. What remains today is a fractured version of the original cartel, with cells scattered across regions, still operating, still violent. Their methods, however, live on copied by others, normalized in regions where law no longer rules. Los Zetas didn't just break the rules, they rewrote them, turning crime into war and neighborhoods into battlegrounds. If MS-13 is the face of Central America's gang crisis, Barrio 18 is the equally dangerous rival staring right back. Known for the number 18 tattooed across faces and bodies, this gang controls neighborhoods, prisons, and entire communities with a grip just as ruthless as any cartel. Barrio 18, also called 18th Street, was born in Los Angeles, just like MS-13. And like its rival, it spreads south, finding a permanent home in El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. In many cities, they are the law. They impose curfews, collect fees from businesses, and determine who gets to walk where and when. The violence is relentless. Turf wars between Barrio 18 and MS-13 have turned cities into war zones. Drive-bys, ambushes, even machete attacks are part of their arsenal. Their members often live and die by strict internal codes. Disloyalty is dealt with immediately, and loyalty is tested constantly. What makes Barrio 18 terrifying isn't just the bloodshed. It's how they recruit and expand. They target youth who feel trapped, offering money, protection, and belonging. Once inside, members are expected to prove themselves fast, often through acts that leave no turning back. Like MS-13, Barrio 18 isn't just a gang, it's a network. They operate from inside prisons, using smuggled phones and corrupt contacts to keep business running smoothly. They're known to collaborate with larger criminal organizations, offering muscle and street-level control in exchange for resources. Governments have tried mass arrests, special task forces, even military deployment. But the gang continues to evolve. Sometimes they splinter, creating new cells that fight each other. Other times they regroup, stronger than before. They may not make headlines every day, but in the neighborhoods they control, their presence is constant and terrifying. Before Al Capone, before The Godfather, there was the Blackhand, America's first taste of organized crime, imported from Italy. And they didn't come quietly. Active in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the Blackhand wasn't a formal gang, but more a method, a brand of terror used by early Italian immigrants to extort their own communities. Victims would receive letters marked with a black handprint, often containing threats written in broken English and sealed with a demand for cash. Pay up or suffer the consequences. The letters weren't empty threats. Bombings, kidnappings, and beatings followed those who ignored the warnings. The Black Hand preyed on fear, using mystery and violence to establish control in immigrant neighborhoods from New York to Chicago and beyond. They weren't part of a strict hierarchy. Some were freelancers, others were loosely connected to families in Italy. What united them was a willingness to use violence to collect money and silence anyone who resisted. The public feared them and the press gave them dramatic headlines. For a time, simply being suspected of involvement meant being watched by police or hunted by rivals. Eventually, as Italian-American crime families rose and organized into what became the Mafia, the Blackhand disappeared. Or rather, it evolved. Their methods, extortion-coded threats and public intimidation, became part of the playbook for gangs that followed. The Blackhand might be history, but their legacy lives on in the structure and methods of modern organized crime. They didn't wear suits or make business deals. They came with a letter, a demand, and a warning. And in many cases, that was all it took. In the 1980s, bullets rained down and burst like a shower. That's how the Shower Posse got its name, and they lived up to it. Born in the tough streets of Kingston, Jamaica, the gang made its way to the United States, setting up shop in cities like Miami and New York. What followed was a wave of organized chaos that overwhelmed even seasoned law enforcement. The Shower Posse didn't just deal in fear, they exported it. With deep political ties back home and access to weapons and illegal substances, they operated like a hybrid of cartel and militia. Their members were known for discipline, precision, and an unmatched willingness to unleash violence. In New York's drug-fueled 1980s, they battled rivals like the Jamaican Spanglers, leaving a trail of firepower and fear through neighborhoods in the Bronx and Brooklyn. Authorities called them one of the most dangerous foreign gangs ever to land on United States soil. But even as headlines faded, the gang didn't disappear. Its legacy remains in court files, whispered stories, and streets forever changed by the sound of that violent shower. That's about it. Which gang scared you the most? Write in the comments. For more useful information, watch other videos.